Microsoft has just been stepping in doo-doo on the Windows side of things pretty much left and right lately. They had their whole fiasco with Recall last year.
Which they've just kept.
Windows, we've got a video coming soon comparing original Recall and new Recall, and it is better, but it's still
It's still Recall.
deeply problematic.
Nice.
Windows has just felt like such a bloated mess lately, dude. I had to go through the initial setup wizard recently, and it's just like, can I just use my computer? Can you just, you don't need to know if I need it for entertainment or media or game. I mean, all of it, just move.
Windows device setup is horrible.
Get out of the way.
It's actually terrible.
None of this matters.
I remember like, I don't know, late 2000s, new device setup, honestly, MacBook or Windows was like kind of a cool experience. And now it just sucks. I don't know about MacBook. I haven't done it in a long time. But the Windows laptop setup is terrible.
And then meanwhile, Dave 2D compared two identical Legion Go S's, one with Windows 11 and the other with SteamOS. The SteamOS version outperformed its Windows counterpart by, I gotta say, a shocking amount. Like I remember not that long ago when Windows consistently was faster than Linux for gaming.
Yeah.
That is no longer the case. Spider-Man 2 out of Cyberpunk, you guys are gonna have to go check out the video if you want the exact numbers because it's Dave 2D's numbers. But out of Cyberpunk, Helldivers 2, Doom Eternal, Spider-Man 2, and Witcher 3, only one of them was a win for Windows 11 compared to SteamOS, and just barely. Like I'm talking by like run-to-run variance, 1 frame per second difference. And this is in spite of the fact that we're dealing with the Proton compatibility layer. Like, that is mind-blowing. That's how far Linux drivers have come, and that's how much less overhead SteamOS offers compared to Windows. Not to mention that on the SteamOS version of the Legion OS, you're not paying for Windows. So it's over $100 cheaper at retail, according to his video. We also saw a similar performance delta in a video from Random Gaming HD's video comparing an identical system running both Windows 10 and SteamOS. So in this case, it was a desktop system with a 12400F processor, 16 gigs of RAM, 6500 XT GPU, and a 256 gig NVMe SSD. SteamOS once again won, this time in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Black Myth Wukong, and Forza Horizon 4. CS2 was a win for Windows, but I mean, SteamOS got over 150 FPS, so it's not like it's really an issue anyway. Meanwhile, in other Windows gaming news, Microsoft is apparently temporarily sidelining their rumored Xbox handheld gaming device to focus on optimizing the Windows 11 gaming experience, especially for mobile devices.
Good luck with that.
Their cloud gaming device and ROG Ally 2 collab seem to be unaffected. This is, I don't know, good news? I don't know what it is. Because on the one hand, it's not like Microsoft clearly is incapable of building a streamlined, low-overhead operating system for gaming. Literally, that's what runs on the Xbox. But whether Windows has just gotten too bloated, or whether they've been unfocused, or whether their partners are not delivering on the driver quality that they need, and they're probably not that as much. It's clear that Windows gaming has got, they can't figure it out, can they?
My lack of enthusiasm for this, I think, is based around like practically every time that they've tried to touch it, they've just either done nothing or made it worse, as far as my understanding goes.
They've done some cool stuff. I mean, remember back...
Gaming mode was worse, if you remember.
I'm not talking about gaming mode, but remember Vista had that, like...
Dude, okay, when's the launch date of Vista, bro?
I'm just saying.
January 30th, 2007!
Okay, in Vista...
It's been almost 20 years.
In Vista, there was a My Games folder that consolidated the location of all your game, like, config files and save files and everything.
I remember that.
This was back before Cloud Save was just a thing you could take for granted in every game, and it was super useful because when you reformat it or whatever, you could just grab that folder, make sure you back it up, and dump it into that folder again on the new system, except for the games that didn't put their stuff in there. Those ones you had to go hunting for, so it still kind of sucked. But yeah, Microsoft just can't... I mean, Games for Windows Live seemed well-intentioned,
what happened to that folder?
but was horrible. Yeah, the folder went away. Games for Windows Live went away. That one we're happy about.
We're stoked on that one.
Yeah, we're pretty
Except it didn't fully go away, did it?
I mean, mostly.
Yeah,
like,
the ways that it was bad back then are gone, but they still have their like Microsoft login, which is horrible.
Oh,
you were talking the other day about how it just like it makes you re-log in or something.
So no, what happens is, and I don't know if it's specific to Minecraft Dungeons or something, but because we would often go months between playing it, my kids and I like played Minecraft Dungeons for a bit. It's a Diablo clone. It's Minecraft skin anyway. It's kind of fun. So we'd go sometimes months between playing. So I would have to log in 4 accounts, and for some reason mine was bugged, so that and of course your password manager doesn't work properly with like a pop-up inside a game. So sometimes the game would get bugged, so the prompt like wouldn't show up in the pop-up, and you'd have to like go delete some config file to get it to show up, and then it would show up. For some reason, something to do with my account, whether it's because it's like an LMG account, or whether it's because it's like a parent account, or it's something. I don't know. But if I typo my password, that's it. I have to reset my password. There's no like go back and try again. Nothing. It immediately goes, you need to reset your password. If I enter it wrong 1 time.
I enter passwords wrong all the time.
Well, yeah, because my passwords are long and have special characters and stuff. So I'm at the point now where when I enter my Microsoft password, I'm like, finger peck to make sure that I get it right, because I don't mind changing my passwords once in a while. It's a good security practice. What I don't like is changing my passwords all the time, especially when they're ones that I use every day, and I do kind of try to memorize because it's more convenient than, you know, unlocking my phone and then open the app and then authenticate the app and then navigate. I hate password managers. So where were we going with this? Right? Yeah, gaming on Windows is an absolute dumpster fire. Dude, the fact that it takes like 10 minutes to go from like first opening the game to actually driving a car in Forza is
I was just going to bring up Forza because I actually really like Horizon 5. And it's the first racing game in a very long time. I was like, I want my friends to come play this with me. I convinced one person to buy the game and play with me. I am very lucky that they had a great time with the game single player, because playing with them multiplayer just didn't work. And I just stopped recommending the game to all my friends because I was like, we can't play together anyways, so they'll either find it themselves or whatever, I guess. And it was purely because of like Microsoft's junk matchmaking and login stuff. You try to play Halo, you launch on Steam, everything's fine, blump, login. Well, cool. Invite people to the party, maybe they don't show up. Things don't work like a huge percentage
of the time. Or they are working, but like you can't see their avatar.
See it.
And we all know that seeing the avatar is the whole point anyway, so they can sell more skins. So get it right, Microsoft.
How does that part not work? I don't know. It's
to be clear, I'm rooting for Microsoft to fix this. Like I'm super into it. Competition is good. I don't want a SteamOS monopoly in gaming any more than I want a Windows monopoly in gaming. That's not healthy either. I want this fixed, especially because there's always going to be edge cases that, you know, Proton compatibility layer can't fix. You know, older games or whatever the case may be. Like I want Windows to be a robust gaming platform. I'm starting to lose hope, and this is interesting. The battery life testing was fascinating. Dave's video is called "Windows Was the Problem All Along," and the full load tests are not that interesting. You know, the battery life when you're really running everything full tilt, relatively similar. I mean, not the same, you know, not the same at all, but relatively, at least within the same sort of
Windows still
area.
loses.
But when you're running like lower, less demanding, like side scroller type games, SteamOS absolutely steamrolls Windows, like to a degree that I wouldn't have thought was possible.
We'll get more into it when we get to that actual section. But I was playing Final Fantasy VI on my laptop on the plane, and I was very lucky that it had a like full fat power plug on the plane because it was not going to last me very long. And I'm playing Final Fantasy VI, dude. Like, come on, Windows battery life is so bad.
Like you could run that game on a watch, easily these days.
Come on. Ugh.
Oh man, I had my own issues traveling and gaming on Windows. I'm finally okay. This should give you some idea of how deep my game backlog is. I finally picked up Psychonauts 2.
Oh yeah, that's been a bit.
Yeah, it's been a bit. Anyway, the point is, I bought it back when it came out. So, oh man, what's Schaefer's company called again? Whatever, I don't know, his developer. So they got my money, you know. So I supported the game. I loved Psychonauts 1. It was awesome. Anyway, so I finally picked it up, and my laptop was running it great. This thing has, I think, like a 4070 or something like that in it, like pretty powerful GPU, you know, considering the thinness and the flexible form factor. So I've got it all like set up in front of me in like tent mode, and
Nice.
I decided, and I regret this, but I decided when I was holding my Ally and my laptop and a controller, I was like, I have to bring my laptop anyway. So why don't I just game on my
Why
laptop? Yeah, why bother? They both support my external GPU thing with the 4080 or 4090 or whatever in it, the XG Mobile. So why wouldn't I just bring my laptop? That ended up not working out great at all. So first of all, when I tried to use my XG Mobile, I tripped the breaker on the airplane plug.
Oh.
So I wasn't able to use my external GPU anyway, because I guess it draws too much power, so that was irritating.
Yeah, my laptop's pretty low power.
Yeah, but that's fine, because I actually have a decent GPU on this thing anyway. But then, when I wanted to, so I was able to pair my controller, everything, that was fine. But this is hilarious. I was on the plane's Wi-Fi, and I guess we were flying China Air, because we were going over to Taiwan, and somehow the game, okay, I don't know how this happened. Okay, I have no idea, but I'm guessing that somehow the network that I was connected to picked up my time zone or location or something, and somehow the game picked that up, and I was speeding through the initial setup menus, and I accidentally selected Chinese for the language of the game, which normally wouldn't be that big of a deal. But seriously, Google this, I'm not imagining it. Psychonauts 2 buries the language configuration in the accessibility menu, like
Accessibility.
yeah, instead of just having it like kind of obvious.
Usually it's
like
pretty early.
If you're fighting your way, you know, to try to change the bloody language. And because my phone wasn't actually connected to the internet, I couldn't just use Lens to translate it unless I bought another stupid Wi-Fi flight pass. Because they figured out my trick. So I had this hack that I used to use on airplanes to share one Wi-Fi access across all my devices. Windows is actually super cool. Supports mobile hotspotting from Wi-Fi to Wi-Fi. So lots of other devices support being connected to a landline and then sharing and tethering over Wi-Fi, or being on 5G and tethering over Wi-Fi or whatever. But Windows supports sharing a Wi-Fi connection. I'm going to get to that top gear. So anyway, somehow they've kind of figured that out, I guess, and they've done something with the Wi-Fi connection on most of the flights that I've been on recently that makes Windows think you're not connected. So the little globe in the corner is all like, nope, you're not connected, and then that grays out the mobile hotspot sharing thing. You can't force it, even though your connection totally works. And I couldn't find. I looked up guides, and I wasted not most of, but I wasted a bunch of my expensive flight pass Wi-Fi trying to figure out how to bypass blocks that they had on my expensive flight pass Wi-Fi. If anyone knows how to fix that, I'd be super open to it. Anyway, what did Top Gear say? Oh, shoot, I lost the comment I was going to get to. Oh, yeah, Top Gear says change the config file in Psychonauts. It doesn't work. So they have a guide that I Googled and found that if you want to change it to, I think it's French or German or something like that, you go in the config file and you just put language that, and then it will change to that language. But it doesn't appear to work for English, because I guess the assumption is just that it was already English and you were trying to change it to, I don't know, but it didn't work. So anyway, I eventually managed to change it, and I was gaming, and then the lights on the plane went out because it was like nighttime, time to sleep, and I went to adjust the brightness of my screen, and for some reason, whether it's because I'm using a third-party application now instead of Armory Crate on this thing, like it's, I forget what it's called, but it's super cool. Basically, it takes all of the nightmare of Armory Crate and boils it down to this tiny little interface here. Let me see if I can find it. Is this it? Nope. Yeah, here it is. G Helper. That's what it's called. So there. It takes all of Armory Crate. No, wait right now. Takes all of Armory Crate and makes it this, which is awesome. And like Armory Crate with the XG Mobile, the external GPU will sometimes get bugged. And you'll like plug it in, but it won't prompt you to activate it, or like it's plugged in and it won't prompt you to deactivate it, and like it's not safe to. I literally bricked a mobile GPU. That, remember when you tripped on it and it unplugged the mobile GPU? If you unplug it expectedly, I think that one literally died because I never got it working again. So it really matters. So anyway, this lets you just override it. It just has a button, and you'd be like, XG Mobile, and it always works. So I don't know if it's because of this or because of something else. I can't adjust my brightness when it's plugged in. So in the dark of the plane, I have like the power of the sun beaming into my eyes, and then if I wanted to try to game on battery, dude, I've gotten less than an hour for sure. Like less than an hour out of this thing if I was actually trying to play a full fat 3D game. Maybe more than an hour, but like this is like a 10-hour flight. So I was like, well, I have nothing but bad options. I wish I just brought my stupid handheld. I forget what we were supposed to be talking about.
I think we're just complaining about Windows.
Oh yeah, so that well then I was doing great. Good job, Linus.
I will also bundle in that complaining about Windows means kind of complaining about the state of Windows laptops, because that's sort of what you're doing right now. And I will re-bring up what I now know is probably called the screen locking problem that I had with my laptop.
Someone on the subreddit said it might be to do with like your attention. Yeah, this.
I haven't had a chance to actually do this because this was uploaded like I was in the air by the time this was
posted.
Cool. So I haven't had a chance to do it, but this makes so much sense.
Yeah, so this is
I just believe it's it.
Yeah, this is a thing where like if you look away from the laptop, it blanks the screen.
But here's my problem.
Yeah.
I just think it basically doesn't work at all. That's my current stance on it. Because it can be daytime and I'm staring right at it and it will just lock. It can be nighttime and I have something covering the webcam and it'll work just fine for like an hour and then randomly lock.
It's a fine line, dude. Because as a company like Microsoft, right, you have to give your partners room to differentiate their products. Yeah. Otherwise, you might as well be Apple, right? You end up with no innovation.
You lose your special
But you also have to just like keep the leash at a reasonable length because they're just going to do
this
dumb
is so stupid. And my biggest problem with this is it doesn't tell you at all.
Right.
Like if you know I slept the computer, woke it back up so that I could actually use it again, and then there was like a little boom, and in the corner it was like, by the way, that was us.
But then you wouldn't want that to happen every time.
I could turn this off if I want to. I could also at that point in time say, don't
never prompt me about this again.
But it would be really sick if it told me at least one time, because again, I haven't had time to change the setting. I pretty much guarantee you this is the actual actual problem. So like, no, I haven't tested it, but it makes so much sense this would be it, especially because I ran into the Hardware Canucks guys while I was at Computex, and one of them told me that they saw that bit on the show. They have a very similar version of a Lenovo laptop and have the exact same problem.
Okay, so it's probably that then.
Yes.
Probably the screen laptop.
So now I have to go around and like tell everyone that I know that has this laptop. And a bunch of people have reached out being like, yeah, I have the same stupid problem. I thought about returning it, blah, blah, blah. It's like, Lenovo, do you understand? Like, everyone thinks you suck, and it's just a software setting. Like, people think your laptops suck and are broken, and that's not even the case.
Dude,
outside of that, I love that laptop.
The amount of product problems that are caused seemingly by just nobody at the company actually using the product is mind-blowing.
It has to be the case here.
It's mind-blowing.
Or it's a problem where you have a overly informed expert.
Yeah, or that.
Where they know what this is,
like,
so they just deal with it.
Yvonne is doing an iPhone challenge right now. So she just switched over to iPhone, and getting WhatsApp backed up and migrated between Android and iOS is like inexcusably broken. The fact that has, so she lost a bunch of message history. I lost a bunch of message history, even though I mostly know what I'm doing. Like it will say you backed up to it'll tell you what Google account it's backed up to, and then you go to restore it and it's like missing a bunch of stuff because there's like a specific way you have to do it when you're migrating between devices where you have to scan the QR code. So I didn't really screw up because the QR code was there and I was trying to scan it, but the camera was like blurry and there was no alternative. You have to scan the QR code. There's no other way. And then I wasn't able to do it. So I lost like 4 months of my message history because that part wasn't like backed up on that phone yet or something, and I had to restore from one other thing and their backups are just broken. It's infuriating. Kara Karotuk, don't worry about my tennis elbow. I am intentionally moving it. I'm not doing anything in weird positions. I'm okay. And this is just like a massage thing. It's fine.
He's right.
Yeah.
That made me think of something else I want to bring up, but I'm not going to tangent us at this time, so I just add the note for later.
Hurts, but it's stronger. All right, what are we supposed to be
more
doing?
Windows complaining to do?
No, I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to move on from Windows in general. If it wasn't for anti-cheat and just like application compatibility lock-in, I don't see why I would use it anymore.
If I could get away from multiple games that I play only working on Windows, and like genuinely right now, if I could get away from that, I would switch on my personal computer.
Maybe it's time for Windows. A Linux challenge again.
Another one?
Maybe it's time. I keep telling myself I'm going to wait for SteamOS. Like the broad, and it's coming. Like they have an installer that is now validated for non-Valve handhelds, and it does work on desktops as long as you've got a compatible desktop, which I kind of do actually. I think I have like a 79.
Does SteamOS actually
7950X
offer anything uniquely?
Does what? Sorry?
Does it offer anything uniquely?
It offers being ready to go. Which
so you can still install like there's no special sauce just for SteamOS in relation to like Proton or anything like that.
Not that I'm aware of. No.
Yeah, okay.
No, you should be able to have the full SteamOS experience on something else pretty much, as long as you're willing to kind of configure it a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think it needs much. I feel like
I want to do that.
Yeah, that's fine. We used different distros last time.
We totally did.
Yeah, I was trying to evaluate for myself basically. Do I just want to use Mint again because like that's what I would want to do?
Right.
But then I want the best possible gaming setup. So like, can I still do that on Mint?
You should be able to.
Probably.
And like realistically, you have more software troubleshooting capabilities than I do. So I would definitely lean toward the more set and forget, ready to go Linux distro.
I'm also like, I don't know how this works, but even with like a 6-year gap between using Mint, it like immediately felt familiar again. So like I kind of want to go back to that thing.
Yeah.
It's like whatever way they've done it. Mint just like feels really good to me.
And what's nice about using a full desktop distro that's intended for that use case is that you're not going to be limited by some of the things that are not that way about SteamOS. Like SteamOS, to my knowledge, still doesn't have baked-in printer support.
Yeah, like I wonder if you're going to be running into like your aversion to wanting to set up things for gaming. I wonder if it's going to set you up for failure in other ways.
Yeah, could very well be. Admittedly, I didn't spend a long time, but I probably burned about half an hour trying to like install printer support on SteamOS because we were trying to use an ancient printer and we couldn't find a Windows driver that worked. I was like, right, Linux. What's the closest Linux machine that I have? A Steam Deck. I'll just plug it into a Steam Deck. Yeah. And it totally didn't work.
Yeah. Someone in Folkman chat said doing it on, I don't know what they mean by it, but I'm assuming they mean like Proton stuff. Doing it on Mint for the last 3 months, super easy so far. Hell yeah.
Guys, I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't think that I've seen people more divided over a game before. You got people that love it, people that hate it, people that are screaming it from the top of the hills. You got people that are calling it a $40 mod, and some people that are saying it's a blatant cash grab. But whatever it is, there's a wide spectrum of emotions and opinions around Elden Ring, Night Rain. Some of it based off of things that a lot of you guys don't even know about. But it makes a lot of sense because if you look at Night Rain and you look at Dust Bloods, well, these two games, I mean, they look like a pivot from any FromSoft fan's perspective. And that's gonna worry some people, especially with how successful they have been, incredibly successful that they have been over the last few years. These games have a lot of mechanics, a lot of themes that are completely foreign to the FromSoft formula. And we're talking about games that have massive, massive audiences. Elden Ring has a massive audience. Dark Souls has a massive audience. And a game like this is going to divide that audience. I've played it. I've had a lot of fun with it. But I have my fair share of criticisms and a lot of my concerns as well. But from an industry perspective, there's some things that are just so fascinating about this game. I mean, this is a non-live service, multiplayer game coming from a AAA studio, and we just don't see that. Ever. So today what I want to do is I want to talk about some things that very few people know about with this game. I want to talk about what it is and isn't. I want to talk about the player reception around the game and what this game means for FromSoft's future. But before that, today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Rocket Money, the app that I use to pretend like I actually can keep multiple credits. That's where the money out. 300,000 concurrent players on day one, holding steady throughout the weekend, selling over 2 million copies in just under 24 hours. That is a rare kind of launch, especially for a spin-off that is as weird as Elden Ring Night Rain, and especially given how mixed the feedback has been online. Critically, it's doing fine. It's a 77 on Metacritic and 80 on OpenCritic. Steam reviews started out mixed, but then climbed up to mostly positive after a patch and fixed a couple of things, and the game had a little bit of extra time to settle. Not exactly a triumph in comparison to some of their other games, but it's nowhere near the disaster that some other people are trying to make it out to be. Actually, thinking about it now, I think the only reason why this game stands in such high contrast is specifically because of how successful FromSoft has been and how massive Elden Ring was. It's one of the most celebrated games in the past decade, reaching almost 30 million copies sold. Anything mixed or just all right is just going to look bad by comparison. At its core, Night Rain is still unmistakably FromSoft. The combat, the music, the boss design, the gear, the atmosphere, it all feels familiar. But layered on top of that are systems and ideas that for a lot of people feel like a betrayal. You have shrinking zone mechanics like Fortnite or Warzone. The pacing is faster. There's no fall damage. You can use spirit stream jumps to launch yourself across the map or ride on spectral hawks. Structurally, it's a roguelike boss rush with limited persistence, and that's a hell of a thing to attach to Elden Ring's name. So I get it, I really do. If you're someone who loves Souls games, if you associate FromSoft with tightly authored RPGs that reward slow, deliberate play, this game probably feels like it wasn't made for you. And the fact that it leans into these modern trends that have become synonymous with monetization, with live service burnout, with games that are chasing the market rather than leading it, well, that's going to set off some alarms. For a lot of players, Night Rain doesn't just feel unfamiliar, it feels like a warning. People see games like Night Rain or their upcoming game Dust Bloods and they start getting BioWare flashbacks, a studio that was known for deep character-driven RPGs, pivoting to shared world shooters, multiplayer experiments, or live service projects like Anthem that they have no business making. That pivot didn't just fail for those guys, it poisoned the well, it destroyed the studio and its reputation. So now anytime any beloved studio starts reaching outside of their lane, people are bracing for impact because, well, we've seen how this story ends. So believe me when I say I understand the skepticism. This industry has trained us to be wary, trained us to see every creative pivot as a potential grift, and when you've been burned enough times, pattern recognition becomes a survival instinct. But I think that Night Rain, at least from a business and design standpoint, is wildly misunderstood. What most people don't realize, and FromSoft should have made this blatantly obvious, is that Night Rain isn't the standard FromSoft game. And I think a lot of us can tell that, but this game was not directed by Miyazaki. This game isn't a part of some grander vision. Well, I guess it kind of is in some ways, but it was a test, a low-stakes experiment that was led by Junya Ishizaki, a first-time director who quietly has been shaping FromSoft's DNA for over a decade now. He started as a level designer on the original Dark Souls back in 2011, then went on to be a level and battle designer in Bloodborne, and later the combat designer for Dark Souls 3 and Elden Ring. Some of the most iconic encounters and mechanical highlights in the studio's industry, and he had a hand in all of it. Night Rain is his shot, a small-scale, controlled opportunity to take the reins and try something new. It reuses a ton of assets from the Soulsborne library, especially with Elden Ring. It was developed in under 3 years, and it was made on a shoestring budget compared to AAA standards, and it's $40 for a reason. If you guys take a step back for a second, everything about this project screams insulation, risk management, more than anything else. A creative sandbox that was built with the quiet expectation that it might not do well. And the wild part is that Miyazaki more or less said this himself. In an interview with The Guardian last year, he openly admitted that they were preparing for failure, and they were trying to build a culture that could survive it and learn from it. In an article from The Guardian written by Keza McDonald titled The Game Design Secrets of Elden Ring's Hidetaka Miyazaki, Keza interviewed Miyazaki on his design philosophy and the future of From Software. She wrote, Miyazaki is an extremely hands-on director, and all of his games bear the unmistakable imprint of his influence, but he has also been attempting to pass down his knowledge and artistic approach to others at From Software in the 10 years that he's been its president, ensuring that they too have room to fail. Budget, scale, scope, everything has grown to the point where room for failure isn't tolerated as much as I think it was in the past, he told me. FromSoft has its own way of hedging risk, so to speak, and that most of our projects have a partner who's financing the project. From a business management perspective, we're not betting everything on one single project. At the same time, you have to find the right place to allow for failure. Whether it's smaller in scope or scale, or it's a smaller module of something bigger, there needs to be room for that. I think that's where a lot of young game directors will be challenged and be able to learn from it. Making sure you can understand and identify where those pockets of failure can be allowed is how you try to grow talent. Miyazaki views Elden Ring as a turning point for From Software. Before and after Elden Ring, there's going to be a clear difference. You could see that with Armored Core 6, I would say. He hopes that we will soon be seeing games from other directors at the company, not just himself. Where From Software is right now in terms of scale, I would say that Elden Ring is really the limit. We've tapped every resource and talent that we have to access it. Scaling it even bigger, I would have my concerns. Perhaps having multiple projects is the next stage, where some of the other younger talent can have the opportunity to manage and direct game design for a smaller project. I mean, you really can't get much more direct than that when you line up Night Rain and Dustbloods right next to Miyazaki's own words. It all starts to click together, especially that one line. You have to find the right project to allow for failure, smaller in scope or scale, or a module of something bigger. I think that's where a lot of young game directors will be challenged and able to learn from it. That is not vague corporate speak. That is a roadmap, and From Software is following it to the letter. Junya Ishizaki is that young game director. Night Rain is that smaller, self-contained project reusing assets from other games. Dustbloods, that upcoming PvEVP extraction game that From Software is exclusively making for Nintendo, likely funded by Nintendo, is likely the larger vision here. One that borrows from what Night Rain has already tested, its own closures, the co-op scaling, the faster travel, random gear. These games aren't random departures, they are sequential steps. And the funny thing is, this isn't even the first time that these guys have done it. It's just another step in their strategy. I think a lot of people completely missed that Armored Core 6, that game was just as calculated. Mech games were and still are relatively niche, so that game was going to be a gamble regardless of what they were doing. It was made with less than half the budget of Elden Ring. It was the first project directed by Masaru Yamamura, another long-time FromSoft dev that was stepping up to the plate for the first time. And while most people now see AC6 as a clear win, part of why it feels that way is because expectations were in check. Nobody was expecting that game to be the next Elden Ring, and most of that audience didn't even show up for it. That game sold around 3 million copies, not 30, but internally it was likely considered to be a success. The risk was measured, the new director got his shot, and the studio proved that they could branch out without overextending. Say what you will about the end product of the strategy, but from a business perspective, this is some of the smartest project management that I've seen from AAA studios in years. Most publishers do not do this. They do not hedge. They go all in, believing that the audience and the money is going to be there based on whatever their reputation is or whatever the industry trends are. These guys dive headfirst into brand new genres or live service pivots without any safety net. BioWare with Anthem, Rocksteady with Suicide Squad, Arcane with Redfall, Crystal Dynamics with Marvel Avengers, and it's not always live service games that are killing some of these studios. Sometimes it's just the scale, the pressure, or the wrong project at the wrong time. The pattern is always the exact same though. A big bet, a big miss, and the fallout lands on the devs. What From Software is doing here isn't just cautious, it's sustainable. They're building a pipeline. And the smartest part about all of this is that it's the quiet admission that Miyazaki can't and shouldn't be at the center of everything forever. If this studio wants to grow, if their games are going to evolve, then that knowledge needs to be passed down. That trust has to be built. And like Miyazaki said, you have to carve out space for people to fail. That's not a strategy. That's leadership. Hell, it's the exact same kind of bet that they took on him back when Sony funded Demon's Souls. He was the guy that was just working his way up through Armored Core until somebody finally gave him a shot. Now he's doing the same thing for the next generation. That is not a step back. That is the clear sign of a studio that's thinking long term. If you guys have watched this channel for any length of time, then you guys would know that my biggest criticism of AAA is a lack of strong leadership. And what they're doing right now over at FromSoft is building up strong leadership. They realize that they have it with Miyazaki, and they're trying to pass down some of that institutional knowledge, some of that skill to some of these other developers, some of these other directors, so they can continue to make great games in the future. This is something that you just have to do. I've also told you guys, make sure you stop paying attention to the name of the game, stop paying attention to the name of the studio, instead start paying attention to the name of who is directing the games that you enjoy. Because more times than not, those are the guys that have most of the influence in the studio. I mean, they're the director after all. They're directing all of these teams as one. And it doesn't mean that great directors can't fail. They definitely can, but these are the guys, their leadership is what brings everything all together. Casey Hudson left BioWare after Mass Effect 3. Then we got Mass Effect Andromeda. Bruce Straley was a part of Last of Us Part 1. He was not there for Last of Us Part 2. That was all Neil Druckmann. World of Warcraft, Cataclysm, and then on. Completely different management structure, completely different leadership. That game changed forever. 9 times out of 10 when a game is failing to meet your expectations, or if it just feels different in general, the most jarring part is it's just the leadership to change. The direction of the game changed. I highly recommend people start looking into this because it's the best way to be a educated consumer. Well, I think that opinions are going to vary with Night Rain and also Dustbloods in the future. I have to respect the measured risk and growing talent from within. There's a quote that I grabbed from J.K. Rowling that says, it's impossible to live life without failing at something, unless you live so cautiously that you might as well not have lived at all. And in that case, you fail by default. FromSoft recognizes that they could just go make another Dark Souls, which they likely will in the future, but they need to experiment, and they need to give their junior talent, their junior directors, a shot if they're ever going to have any sort of a future as a studio, because Miyazaki's not always going to be there, and he can't be a part of every single project. I think it's important to temper our expectations when it comes to some of these games. Things change, regardless, with any of these studios. Not every studio is going to nail it every single time. But I don't really think that Night Rain is necessarily a miss. I've played it. I've had a lot of fun with it. I definitely have some things that I have issues with, which we'll talk about. But I think they represent something that I want to see more of in this industry, especially from AAA. And that's just multiplayer without live service. Because it just feels right. I put a good chunk of time into Night Rain, and I think that I've seen most of what players have been praising and most of what they've been frustrated by. But I want to start this out by saying, damn, does this game feel good to play? The movement is so fluid in a way that FromSoft rarely embraces outside of Sekiro or Armored Core. The traversal is so fast and reactive. It's almost arcade-like in a lot of ways. Vaulting over walls and climbing over things is so much smoother after their latest patch, and there's just something so exhilarating about being this quick in a Souls game. Night Rain just kind of lets you go. And despite all the things that this game changes, it's still unmistakably Elden Ring. The world design, the music, the tone, the enemy variety, the combat, it is all here. Structures and spatial layouts that scream From Software, and because most of that foundation is familiar, there's basically no onboarding learning curve here. If you've played Elden Ring, you can pick this up instantly. That instant familiarity is one of the game's biggest strengths. It lowers the barrier to entry without dumbing it down for anything. The core gameplay gameplay loop here is just fun, and in co-op, it really starts clicking together. Fully co-op boss fights with 2 other players, especially if you guys are actually in voice, especially if you have friends to begin with, shows that this kind of real-time coordination can actually work. One player can pull aggro, other players can hang back with range support, and roles will shift naturally throughout the fight. It's flexible, reactive, and it's way more satisfying than I expected. Honestly, it makes me believe that an Elden Ring style MMO might not actually be that crazy of an idea after all, because for the first time, it feels like an action combat system could actually support it. Now, I brought this up in my Lords of the Fallen video, and it's something I really liked about Code Vein 2, but I've always had a soft spot for these games that loosen up a little bit on the Souls formula, ones that let you breathe a little, games that don't demand your full concentration every single second that you're playing. Night Rain fits that mold. Faster pace, session-based, fully co-op, and it's built to respect your time without watering down the entire experience. I will also say that the progression system caught me off guard in a good way. I didn't expect much, but the way the world evolves between runs adds genuine replay value here. Take down the first major boss, and suddenly there's a massive crater that splits the map in half. Harder bosses spawn inside of it. There's a secret upgrade that's waiting at the bottom. Other times, there's an entire scarlet forest that engulfs half of the zone, reshaping the landscape and throwing your entire route into chaos. What's nice is these shifts aren't just visual. They force you to reevaluate your pathing, rethink your objectives, and adapt your whole strategy. It's got that roguelike unpredictability, but with the kind of world-building weight that FromSoft normally brings to their games. The Remembrance quests are genuinely cool. Not only are you hunting down these Night Lord bosses, but you're also chasing these character-specific quest lines to recover their memories. These unlock some of the best rewards in the entire game, and more importantly, they are the roguelike mechanics in a lot of ways. Each completed Remembrance will give you a chalice. That chalice will let you customize your relic loadout. It's one of the few systems in the game that gives you some real agency during your run, and honestly, I think it's brilliant. Now, of course, I do have my complaints when it comes to this game, and the most baffling one of them all is how do you launch a co-op first game in 2025 without crossplay or even basic multiplayer features? What the fuck, From Software? No in-game voice chat, no text chat. You can play solos or trios, but you can't play duos for whatever reason. That is a real problem because Night Rain demands coordination. Roles matter, bosses hit harder. You need to know where you're going, what you're doing, and what you need to get before your run ends. And without any real way to communicate, every single match with strangers is going to feel like a gamble. One game, everything's going to click. Somebody's marking the maps, calling the shots. You guys are having no problem clearing through the game. It's going to feel like a real co-op experience. But the next, all of a sudden, you're stuck with a team who's dying to low-tier mobs, and since players can respawn as much as they want until they die to the main boss, there's no fail-state, there's no reset. You just waste your time. A simple voice or text chat feature would fix this, but without it, you're stuck. Now, speaking of knowing where to go and what to get while you're actually in a run, while some of Night Rain's more core features and systems are great, the actual roguelike systems on the map are incredibly weak. And look, roguelites are probably my most played genre. I have sunk countless hours into Risk of Rain 2, Hades, Balatro, Slay the Spire, and a long list of other games. And what makes those games click is how deliberate progression ends up feeling. Each run is a fresh start, and each choice that you make layers on top of a build. It's strategic, not just reactive. Take Hades as an example. You pick a weapon. After that, every single room is either going to offer you a god power, a passive bonus, or a currency. You make choices, reroll, stack synergies, shape the run. The longer you go, the more tailored your build ends up becoming. It's not just about power, it's about expression. Night Rain doesn't give you that. It throws powers at you with no synergy, no pathing, and barely any control. It's random in the worst way, scattered, incoherent, disconnected from how you're actually playing the game. Yes, there's a map filter where you can go and hunt for specific weapons, status effects, class, and consumables, but that rarely clicks together. Most of what you're fighting is just weapons. Carrying a few of them with the same type of passives will give you a slight boost to damage or status chance, but that's pretty much as far as that system goes. You might get an HP or FP boost or a stamina buff or one of those slow walking aura farming passives, but none of it actually ties back to a build in a meaningful way. Most of the build crafting in this game happens outside of the run rather than inside of the run, through relics and remembrances, both permanent unlocks. But that system is hidden behind FromSoft's esoteric world building and quest design. Most players are probably not even going to realize that there's a quest log in the Keep's journal. Most will assume that it's just lore and they're not really interested in lore, so they're not even going to take a look at it, and they're going to find out either through a YouTube video like this or they're going to search for it online, and that's the way that they're going to figure it out. If you never open that menu, you're going to have no idea that there's a whole layer of progression that's been tucked away. Now, once you're inside of a run, you're most likely just scavenging. Maybe you're going to find a weapon with the right element that you're looking for if it's on the map at the time, or if it's on the right path that you need for the rest of your team. You'll hit a few Shrines of Marika on the way, upgrade your flask, grab a couple of smithing stones or minor buffs if you can. None of it actually feels like you're building on your class or your weapon in a meaningful way. It's just a bunch of disconnected systems with no core loop that's holding it all together. And yet, despite all of that, I still enjoy playing the game. I really enjoy playing this game. The movement, the combat, the boss fights, the sheer speed of the game. There's real energy here. But what I think really holds this entire experience together, what makes Night Rain a good game to play, is the fact that it has Elden Ring in the title, because it's built reusing its assets and its world. The controls are sharp, the world is familiar, the core systems are still here, but that foundation is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. But Night Rain is exactly what it's supposed to be, an experimental title. FromSoft is trying something new on a smaller budget with a new director at the helm. And yeah, some of these parts are rough, extremely rough in some cases, but some parts genuinely shine. And for $40, fully co-op, no live service, no microtransactions, that kind of offering, especially from a studio of this size, is almost unheard of. Actually, I think it is unheard of. We've been trained to expect subscriptions, microtransaction loops, seasonal grinds. This is just a game, self-contained, earned, not bought. And it feels like something that we haven't seen in a long time. I mean, everything that you earn in Night Rain comes from actually playing the game. Imagine that. What a foreign concept that is. Skins, emotes, relics, chalices, they're all bought using Merc, the currency that you get by completing every single run. There's no cash shop, no option to buy your way through progression, no splash screens with limited time offers, no battle pass sitting in the corner like a ticking clock counting down your time and enjoyment. You just play the game and you get rewarded for doing so. And honestly, that alone feels great. I don't think a lot of these companies realize how much damage they've done to gaming culture, or maybe they don't even really care. The industry has profited immensely, sure, but I think that they've created a more cynical, price-sensitive, and hostile audience because of how they monetize these games, and that's going to burn out. Nobody trusts these studios anymore, and I don't think that it's sustainable without balanced and fair offerings. Night Rain is that fair offering, at least from my perspective. And that's how I hope people start to view it. While I understand people's concerns, whether it's about the direction, tone, or the shadow of Dustbloods looming in the future, Night Rain is exactly the kind of project that I want to see more of. A fully co-op experience, no live service, priced fairly, and built from the ground up as a complete experience. A decade ago, guys, this was the norm. We used to just buy expansions for $20. Multiplayer wasn't a feature to be stripped down and rebuilt as a monetization funnel. You played it because it was fun, not because you felt obligated, not because your season progress was about to expire. I want games to get back to that. I want studios to start treating their players like people again, and Night Rain, for all of its faults, gets that part right. FromSoft took an immensely popular IP, repurposed its assets, built something entirely new and distinct, and did it quickly, cheaply, and respectfully. It probably didn't cost these guys more than $50 million to make. I'd be shocked if it hasn't already paid for itself. And in doing that, they gave new talent, leadership experience, tested future mechanics, and gave their fan base something that they could just enjoy without a catch. I think this is a really tough one from both a player and a developer perspective, because these guys have enjoyed so much success over the past few years, insane success that we also got to experience because we got some great games we got to play as a result of it. But these games are very different. This is foreign territory. And on top of that, this is more like a AA offering from my perspective, not necessarily a AAA offering. That's going to kind of shift perspectives a little bit on that. And there's going to be some players that are out there that genuinely do not want to see this game do well, or Dustbloods when that one releases, because if they make money and they do well for multiplayer games, well, then maybe they're not going to want to make their single player games, and we don't want that. And that's something that we have seen 100 times in the past, which is a completely valid concern for people to have. But also, on the developer side, it must suck to build up this reputation, to put yourself in a place the minute that you want to try something new, your audience wants to check you back in place. You know, from a business perspective, I am in awe at how controlled these guys are. Miyazaki laid the foundation for the concept phases of Armored Core 6, hands it off to a new director, lets that guy take control of it, turns out to be an absolutely fantastic game, makes their money back, bunch of praise from the audience as well as critics. Then he goes and he gives these assets off to this other developer, lets this guy make his little co-op game. Turns out pretty good. Players seem to enjoy it for the most part. They've already made their money back on it. They also now have a proof of concept for Dustbloods, because a lot of these features are going to be in there. And that game is fully funded by Nintendo because it's exclusive for Nintendo, which means there's no risk involved at all. All the while, they're still working on whatever game they're working on in the background, which is like the next Dark Souls game or something like that. These guys are sitting pretty. You got money in the bank. You got your junior leadership, a ton of experience over the past couple of years. You've released 3 games in succession. I mean, they've released a lot of games very, very quickly over the last couple of years. They've been fired them out, and most of them have been pretty high quality, which is definitely going to work to their advantage. But yeah, if anybody in this industry is worth any salt, I would be trying to emulate what this company is doing, because even some of these games are going to miss. It's just going to happen. It's just how it kind of goes more times than not. But either way, these guys are building themselves for the future, and I think it's going to work out for them. I really do. Right? Historically speaking, looking at the way they've gone over the past few years, they've done pretty damn well, and I think they're going to continue to do well. But I've had a lot of fun playing the game. Honestly, I just like the act of actually playing the game, especially with friends. I play with a few people from this community right here in the community Discord. There you go. I plugged the Discord today. I've played with a little bit of friends. I've even shoved my way into some other Discords to find other people to play with as well, because I will not play this game random queue. Oh god, it is bad. Whew. Save yourself some heartache. I'm gonna tell you that right now. But I hope the game does well. I hope it continues to grow. I hope that people continue to enjoy it, and I hope they end up adding some content to it in the future. They've been pretty good with the patches and stuff so far. The patch that they made to the like the jumping mechanic to get up walls. I can't think of the name of it right now. Vaulting. That's what it is. They fixed it almost entirely. It's like perfect now. So they're pretty quick on the draw when it comes to those things. So I'm happy to see that. Outside of that, I'm done. All right. Stay cool. Stay righteous. Stay safe. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Follow me on Twitch. Follow me on YouTube. I said it out of order. Follow me on Twitch. Follow me on YouTube. Subscribe to the video. Share it with your friends. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay cool. Stay righteous. Stay safe. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Family. Early in the morning of December 14th, 2005, pumps were nearly finished filling the upper reservoir at the Tomsock Power Station, marking the end of a daily cycle. Water rose to the top of the Rockville embankment, reaching the concrete parapet wall that ran along the top of the dam. But the water didn't stop. One of the 2 pumps shut off, but the other kept running, and soon the water was lapping over the wall. Within minutes, those splashes turned into a steady stream, cascading over the parapet, pouring against the embankment on the other side. The Rockville eroded slowly at first, but the hole grew deeper and wider. The pump finally shut off, but it was too late. The footing of the parapet wall had already been undermined. The wall tipped over, and a massive surge of water was unleashed down the mountainside, headed directly toward a state park. This award-winning pump storage facility, considered a model of modern engineering, immediately became a center of intense scrutiny. And what the investigations found would change a lot about the field of dam safety. I'm Grady, and this is Practical Engineering. When it was built in the 1960s, the Tomsock pump storage plant was unlike really any other power plant in the world, at least in terms of size. South of St. Louis in the Ozark Mountains, it was designed to meet a very specific need. I've talked about pumped storage on the channel before, and Tomsock was one of the largest facilities of its time. Built by Union Electric, which eventually merged with Ameren, the whole plant is basically a battery. It's actually a net consumer of electricity, which is normally not a good thing for a power plant, but managing the power grid isn't only about how much electricity you can produce, but also when you can produce it. Large coal plants in the Missouri area could make lots of power, but they couldn't ramp that production up and down to accommodate fluctuating demands throughout the day. So Union Electric proposed a clever solution, one that's pretty common today, but was innovative for its time. 2 reservoirs were constructed, one low on the east fork of the Black River, and another near the top of Prophet Mountain, Missouri's 6th highest peak. Between them, a hydroelectric plant with 2 reversible turbines. When electrical demands are low, rather than reducing the output of thermal power plants, that energy can go toward pumping water from the lower to the upper reservoir, usually overnight. Then when demand spikes during the day, all that stored potential energy from cheap electricity can be harvested and put back on the grid by reversing the system to generate hydropower. Of course, you don't get all the power out that you put in. Some of that water evaporates or leaks out, and there are losses of energy in the pumping and generation, but with an overall efficiency of around 70%, it was more than enough to justify the enormous cost of building and operating 2 reservoirs and a power plant that doesn't produce any of its own electricity. The most striking part of the whole facility is the upper reservoir. It's just such an unusual sight, a circular dam, sometimes called a ring dike or ring levee, perched on top of a mountain. This is not usually an efficient way to build a dam. We typically construct them across valleys so that the natural topography can form the sides and back of the reservoir. With a so-called off-channel reservoir, you have to build a dam all the way around, increasing the cost and the engineering complexity. But there are no valleys at the tops of mountains, and that height is an essential part of a pump storage facility. The power available from falling water is really simple to calculate. Multiply gravitational acceleration, the density of the fluid, the volumetric flow rate, and the difference in height called head. We can really only change 2 of these. So for a specific power output needed for a specific duration, you can trade height for flow. The greater the difference in height between the 2 reservoirs in a pump storage facility, the less water you need to move, which reduces the size of all the infrastructure and thus saves costs. The mountains in southeast Missouri provided a perfect location for the project, creating about 750 feet or 230 meters of height between the upper and lower reservoirs. Actually, the whole facility is named after the highest mountain in Missouri, Tomsock, which was the original site for the upper reservoir until there was too much pushback about building a project there, so they moved it to a slightly lower peak nearby. And they encountered some challenging conditions during construction, forcing the engineers to realign the dam to avoid an area of weak geology, giving it that unique kidney bean shape. The original dam was built as a rock fill embankment, basically just dumping a long pile of rocks around the perimeter of the reservoir. Rock fill usually works well as an embankment if you have a good source of material nearby. It's really strong, it doesn't require a lot of compaction, and it doesn't settle much over time like soil fills do. One thing rock fill doesn't do well is hold back water, too many spaces between the rocks. So concrete panels were installed all along the inside of the reservoir to make the embankment watertight. A tunnel connected a Morning Glory inlet through the mountain to the generating plant. The inlet was set into a basin 20 feet or 6 meters below the bottom of the reservoir to suppress the potential for a vortex to form as it was drained each day. The whole project was designed to be operated remotely with no on-site technicians required. Another innovation for the time, but one of the many decisions that would prove disastrous. For most of its life, the Tomsock station operated on average around 100 days per year, usually during the hot summer months when electricity demands were more variable between night and day. Deregulation of the electric power markets in the 1990s opened up the possibility of selling power to other utilities. Those 100 days per year went up to 300, meaning the upper reservoir cycled up and down, often twice per day, nearly every day of the year, and that was starting to cause some problems. The upper reservoir had dealt with leaks essentially since it started operating in the 1960s. Several projects were implemented throughout its life to deal with the issue, but the increased cycles of filling and draining were only making things worse. At one point, small ponds were built beside the reservoir to capture some of the leakage and pump it back inside. In the fall of 2004, Ameren decided to bring out the big guns and spent more than $2 million to install a geomembrane liner to cover the entire reservoir. That essentially fixed the problem, but it caused a few new ones too. About a year later, in September 2005, the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, or IEEE, declared the plant an engineering minor milestone for its innovations in the world of electrical infrastructure. On the day before the ceremony, some of the participants took a tour of the upper reservoir and witnessed water pouring over the parapet wall on one side of the dam. The operators quickly switched from pumping mode to generation to get the water back down. They chalked up the issue to high winds from a remnant tropical storm that caused the overtopping, but just to be safe, they hired a dive inspection team to check on the level sensors, and what they saw was concerning. When that geomembrane liner was installed in the reservoir, there was valid concern that any penetrations might cause leaks in the future. But the reservoir needed level sensors installed for the control system to be operated remotely. So instead of mounting those sensors directly to the concrete through the liner along their length, the engineers tried something different. 2 cables were run between anchors at the top and bottom of the embankment slope. The conduits for the sensors were attached to those cables, minimizing the number of penetrations needed. Unfortunately, the mounting system was under-designed. Those conduits were buoyant and also subject to strong currents as the reservoir filled and emptied each day. Sometime after the spring of 2004, they had become dislodged and deflected, so the sensors inside were providing readings that were lower than the actual water level. Based on those findings, the operators decided to reprogram the control system to subtract 2 feet from the upper set point on the pumps. The original design called for 2 feet or 600 millimeters of freeboard between the top of wall and maximum water surface. They figured that doubling that distance would be enough to avoid issues until permanent repairs could be made during the annual maintenance period when the reservoir was drained. Unfortunately, they would never get the chance. Less than 3 months after that first time someone observed the reservoir overflowing, on December 14th, it happened again, this time in the early dawn when no one was around to notice. Once the parapet wall collapsed, the water quickly eroded down through the dam, emptying roughly 6 billion liters or 200 million cubic feet of water down the steep mountainside straight toward Johnson's Shut-In State Park, stripping away trees and rocks as it surged. By pure luck, the failure happened in the winter when the park was practically empty, but the park superintendent, his wife, and 3 kids, one of whom was only 7 months old, were swept away when the water demolished their house. Incredibly, the entire family survived the event, but not without suffering from injuries and hypothermia. The wave of water flowed into the lower reservoir, where it would have gone anyway later that day, so there were no major downstream impacts. The event was investigated by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and their conclusions were surprising. Like most events of this kind, a series of small oversights, which on their own wouldn't have resulted in a disaster, combined to cause hundreds of millions of dollars in damage, plus the effects on the family I mentioned. First was the embankment. That rock fill it was supposed to have been built from wasn't quite as rocky as the engineers who designed it intended. There was a lot more soil mixed into the fill, resulting in more settlement of the embankment over time. Unsound areas of soil in the embankment's foundation were also not properly cleaned out, making the settlement even worse. From construction to failure, some parts of the parapet wall were a full 2 feet or 600 millimeters lower than where they started. That settlement wasn't taken into consideration when the level sensors were replaced after the lining project in 2004. And with the sensors unattached and free to move around, there was no way for the logic controllers to know the actual elevation of the water in the reservoir. Fail-safe probes were installed on the parapet wall to provide a backup that would automatically shut off the pumps if the level got too high, but they were installed in a location that was actually higher than the top of the settled parts of the embankment wall. If the water hit those sensors, it was already overtopping parts of the wall, and they were incorrectly programmed in a way that required both sensors to be activated before the pump shut off. That first site visit when the water was running over the wall didn't trigger those fail-safe sensors, but no one thought to check them. And rather than ground truth the important elevations like the top of wall and all the sensor levels, they just decided to add a couple feet of margin and postpone a permanent fix. It would have been so easy to have someone on site during those last few minutes of filling the reservoir each day to verify the levels against the electronic measurements, or even a closed-circuit camera, especially after the enormous red flag of seeing it happen a few months earlier. But no one knew it was overtopping, and the owner hadn't notified the regulator the first time it happened, so there was no oversight for how Ameren responded. Probably the most significant error of all happened well before the facility was ever built. The design had no spillway. As an off-channel reservoir, there were only 2 ways water could get in: rain falling on top or water being pumped in. With enough freeboard for a rainstorm and the redundancies built into the control system, the designers never envisioned a need for a way to let water safely run over the top. Unfortunately, when you rely on complicated systems for safety, the likelihood for things to go wrong goes way up. These type of events are sometimes called normal accidents, a term coined by Charles Perrow. The idea is that when systems are complicated, and especially when the safety measures themselves add to a project's complexity, failures are much more likely, even expected. In other words, failure becomes normal. Compared to an industrial control system, a spillway is dead simple. Once the water gets to the crest, it just goes out. They're not fail-proof. I've talked about several spillway failures in previous videos, but there are a lot fewer ways that things can go wrong. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission fined the owner $15 million for the failure, the largest penalty they've ever issued. $5 million of that went into a fund to improve the area around the project, although some recent reporting has alleged those funds have been mismanaged. The state of Missouri also sued and agreed to a $177 million settlement, much of which went toward restorations of the state park, which held a reopening ceremony in 2010. At the same time as Johnson's Shut-In State Park was undergoing renovation, crews were working on rebuilding the upper reservoir at Tom Sauk. To avoid a relicensing process, the dam was built on the same alignment and to the same size as the original project. Rather than trying to repair the flawed rockfill embankment, Ameren and their consultants went with an innovative design. The new dam was built using roller compacted concrete, a dry concrete mix that's handled using earth-moving equipment and compacted into place using rollers. The new design would address both the settlement and the leakage issues that the original structure struggled with, while still taking advantage of the material from the original embankment. That rock fill was crushed and processed into aggregate for the concrete, reducing the amount of material hauled to the remote site. Maybe most importantly, they included a spillway this time. The structure is the largest roller compacted concrete dam in the United States. The plant reopened in 2010, was rededicated as an IEEE milestone, and the project won the U.S. Society on Dams Award of Excellence in a Constructed Project. The failure at Tom Sauk was a wake-up call for the professional community. The regulator, FERC, implemented some big changes to its oversight of dam safety in the wake of the collapse. They put together a task force that issued a technical guidance document specifically addressing the challenges of pump storage facilities that was circulated to the owners. They also updated rules for owners, requiring them to have an internal dam safety program and a chief dam safety engineer who's responsible for overseeing it, a role that Ameren didn't have at the time. The event triggered states as far as Hawaii to bolster their dam safety programs. And most importantly, the failure demonstrated the need for overflow spillways, even for off-channel reservoirs with redundant control systems meant to avoid overfilling. If you're paying attention to issues related to the electrical grid, you know the importance of storage, particularly as intermittent sources of power become a large part of our portfolio. Ways to balance out those mismatches in supply and demand are only becoming more important. Pump storage has traditionally been the only large-scale way to do this economically, but obviously it comes with a trade-off. Dams are among the riskiest structures that humans build. They don't fail very often, but when they do, those failures usually come with serious consequences to people, property, and the environment. And because they don't fail that often, those lessons come slowly and tragically. But with battery storage becoming cheaper and much more widespread, it'll be interesting to see how the economics of pumped storage change. By 2030, some are predicting the US will have more than 400 gigawatt hours of battery storage on the grid. That's more than 100 Tom Socks. We're right at the beginning of some major changes in how energy is stored. Those batteries have a lot of technical differences in how they interact with the grid, and they come with their own environmental challenges and safety considerations, but the risk profile is a lot different than building a major reservoir at the top of a mountain. As energy infrastructure keeps evolving, those differences in risks are probably going to shape the future of how we store power and at what cost. A big lesson from Tom Sock that we learn over and over again is the destructive power of water. It's something I care a lot about. It's defined my education and my career, and so I pay a lot of attention to the news about floods and disasters. For example, major flooding recently hit parts of Central Europe. There's no such thing as a purely natural disaster when it comes to flooding, and I'm always trying to understand how infrastructure is helping or hurting, like the dam that failed in Poland. There's always a push to control the narrative after a disaster, and by focusing on different details of the story, the casualties, preventative measures, and response, different outlets can subtly or not so subtly change how you interpret the facts. That's why I like to use Ground News, today's sponsor. Ground News aggregates leading ownership of the source and are called more than 8 in Central Landscape. They're offering a huge discount right now at the link in the description, 40% off the Vantage subscription.
Juro Noctuba. Juro Noctuba. Marimo usso.
Goa, nu do Ilamak.
Króler, Zono.
enkla, Friedenleier. No konenailo.